I flew all the way to Japan just to design a fuzz pedal. I've always loved Japanese fuzzes, particularly from the 60s and the 70s, because they're amazing, they're quirky, and they sound insane. Things like the K-Fuzz, the Royal Fuzz Box, Unifuzz, the Honey Crying Baby, the Shine Companion, Guyatone Buzz Box, things like the Big Mac Sustain R. But my inspiration for this circuit came directly from these two very similar Guyatone circuits, the Crazy Face and what is referred to as the Sears Fuzz. This was primarily sold in Japan, but you see it with some different brand labels in America. And then this was made in Tokyo by Guyatone and distributed through the Sears catalog in the States. So these are really similar fuzz face style circuits that sound nothing like a fuzz face, are quirky, over the top, crazy sounding fuzz. And I knew because I had one day to buy all the parts, breadboard the circuit, and finalize the schematic, this was the way to go. So this is it. It turned out really cool. In and out, you have a battery off switch on the back, one big master volume and on and off. And this circuit is all about this simple fuzz topology tuned by my ear, interacting with the circuit in the guitar. It's important to say and to state here that using the idea of the 2-transistor crazy face circuit, how did it end up? How close to that did it get? Well, not close, but similar. Meaning that the crazy face is simply a modified fuzz face, and even things like a Tone Bender 1.5 are a modified fuzz face. The smallest change will slide the circuit all over the place. These were the inspiration, and all that really mattered to me was I'm going to use this classic topology that's so important to the fuzz world. I'm going to design this in Japan, and here are the rules. Number one, it has to be quirky. Like, I need this circuit to feel strange because so many Japanese designs and fuzzes, there are moments when they feel broken, when they feel like they fight against the guitar, and that's why people love them. That's why you see Jack White with these weird fuzzes, and these people like the Black Keys, Smashing Pumpkins, all these amazing people that use fuzz. It's like you want to fight against the strangeness of the circuit. And so one piece that was really important is I'm only going to have a volume knob. So immediately it's different. I got rid of the fuzz control. And so the concept was the volume knob of the guitar is the control of the whole pedal. It cleans up in this weird way where it almost becomes a trebly kind of treble boost fuzz overdrive. And then when you crank it all the way, it's incredibly over the top like a big muff. So this circuit went all over the place. It's strange, it's quirky, it sounds broken in all the right ways, but it's absolutely from this lineage. The first step in the journey was to travel to an electronics market called Akihabara. This is in the Chiyoda ward of Tokyo. It's translated or referred to locally as Electronic Town. This is like this little village of buildings, one primary building, and it's just full of stuff. And after World War II, this just became the place to go for electronics. So many Japanese builders and designers would walk down to this market or jump on the train, walk into this place and get the parts to make these actual fuzzes. It's insane. So first thing into the main building is really cool and extremely overwhelming for two reasons. One is that I'm really tall and the hallway's really short.
This ceiling is not made for me.
She wants to see me like being slightly different. But I'm surrounded immediately with resistors, cool capacitors, transistors, op amps. There's this stuff all the way down the hall. Then we go to the escalators and you start leveling up through the building. So we go up a few stories. This one floor had so much crazy stuff. just entire booths of enclosures, entire booths of carbon film resistors, amazing old school capacitors, new old stock stuff too, all kinds of amplifiers, just really incredible. Big crazy mechanical switches, potentiometers, perf board, vero board, etching equipment, everything you need is in this building. And I was able to go through, sort what I needed for this 2 transistor topology, back and forth. I think we were there almost 3 hours. I knew immediately I wanted to stick to era appropriate. And so that first off meant carbon film resistors. I wanted the brown, beautiful, bigger resistors with the color bands that are really cool. Had to find those. And so once I found those, I went from there to capacitors.
Need to get the polarized caps.
Polarized caps.
But I'll get everything else here.
Don't forget polarized caps.
So
on these capacitors, there's all kinds of quirky stuff from this era, and it honestly was challenging because I needed certain values for this circuit. The capacitors within a fuzz circuit like this are primarily responsible for the tonal shape of the circuit. So how bassy or how trebly. When you look at something like a Dallas Rangemaster or a fuzz face, you can make a Rangemaster almost sound like a fuzz face just by changing the cap to be a bigger cap on the front end. In layman's terms, the capacitor values really mattered, and this actually limited my ability to use as many different things as I imagined. As I'm going through the parts, I basically used the type caps that they had the values to keep it simple. And so there were some really cool Japanese made electrolytics, and then I found some really strange, like older style film caps that were these axial types. The most important part of the circuitry or the components to this fuzz is the amplifiers, and I needed transistors. So this is where it got really fun, because transistors can be really hard to find, especially vintage ones. So I'm able to walk around this market and people just have them in buckets. It was wild. And I needed to decide, do I want it to be a silicon transistor? So that would be more 70s. Or do I want it to be germanium, and that's more 60s? People have their ideals here and their opinions that one's better than the other. That's not true. I wanted to make this build as difficult as possible, and I wanted to feel like I was in the 60s and kind of role play this idea.
tell them we're looking for germaniums with a gain of around 100. Well, you could, if you wanted to be really specific.
And then the next question is, do I want it to be NPN or PNP? And all that means is positive ground or negative ground. And again, this is kind of choosing a decade. I wanted it to be difficult. I wanted to fight with the circuit. So I chose PNP, which makes this circuit positive ground, meaning you have to use a battery pretty much. It won't work with normal power supplies. It's the extremely vintage style fuzz. And I found these Toshiba 2SA49 transistors.
Those look like Toshiba. I believe these are Toshiba.
The gains were perfect. They were like around 80, 100, 120. Next, we found this crazy, massive, looks like a military switch for like a missile launcher.
Big chungus.
Yeah.
And I just said, that's the bypass switch. Absolutely. Next was what type of potentiometers. That's what, when you turn a knob, you're turning a potentiometer, which is just a resistor that moves values. I just wanted Japanese made, so I found those. That was easy. And then what am I going to build it on? I could build it point to point, which is really tedious. Like literally the parts connecting to the other parts. Or I could use Vero board, which is a type of strip board that we actually see in certain old Vox pedals. Like even an old Vox tone bender would use Vero. But I decided to use perf board or wafer board, which is just really common. It's what I started on from Radio Shack, and a lot of things like the very first Big Muff is built on this type of board. Again, 1960s perf board means you put the components through, you bend the legs, and you make the legs the trace. So that's what I went with. A battery clip. We found a big crazy knob.
Got a few knob options. It'll be a one knob fuzz, so we can decide that later.
And we just wanted this thing to feel nuts. So at the end of the day, this ended up not even being a pedal. It became a device, almost like a Rangemaster, something that you would set on top of the amp.
I almost wonder if it would be more like that size. Just important. Because that's going to stick out.
I really like the switch and the knob on the front.
Oh, yeah. That's pretty cool.
Let's just buy this.
Yeah, that's great.
The next step from the market is I have literal bags of parts.
Bag. He's got the bag.
Bag.
a lot of stuff to choose from, and I need somewhere to go design this fuzz. Craig was nice enough to let us use his incredibly, insanely cool basement full of endless, rare Japanese amps and guitars.
Was that correct?
So I set at his bench, I pull out the breadboard that I also bought at the market, and I worked on it all night and the next morning. I think a total of 5 hours tweaking the circuit. During this breadboarding process, the most tricky process is these transistors. They're incredibly finicky. They're germanium. They want a fist fight from the point you take them out of the bag. The temperature of the room kept changing. And these germanium devices, they're literally, they're psychotic. And out of this bag of transistors where I had a lot of them, I didn't have any measurement tools and I didn't want any. So I just took each one without touching it, because if I touched it with my hands, it would heat it up and further change the sound. I just took pliers and I individually went through them, made piles according to how hot I felt like they were, and just did it all by ear. Much like, you know, watch someone cooking and they're like, I don't know the recipe. It's a little of this and a little of that.
Heard, chef.
Yes, chef.
That was my attitude and approach as I tried to get this circuit right. As simple as this 2 transistor topology is, every single part, because there's so few parts, they all matter. If you move one resistor, totally different sound. And you can take this topology and build 100 different pedals. And you would think they're all wildly different, but it's really just one little change moves the whole circuit. So I spent a lot of time. I did it all by ear because that's how I wanted to do it. I'm really happy with the sound that I ended up with 5 hours into it. When I had completely finished and signed off on my breadboard and made notes about every component change, basically updated a schematic that was kind of in my head, drew it out, we decided we're gonna write a song, use the breadboard. I'm gonna jam through it in the environment that I designed it in, and we're gonna write a song right there. Every single overdrive, distortion, and fuzz tone is coming out of this circuit. For the solo section, I added a Guyatone MD3, which is a really cool delay made in Tokyo that I love. I turned the guitar volume all the way up for max fuzz. The rhythm guitars, my guitar volume's on about 7, so everything is from this, and then I add this on the solo. Cool. In and out. You have a battery off switch on the back, one big master volume, and on and off. And this circuit is all about this simple fuzz topology interacting with the circuit in the guitar. So the volume and tone and pickups. And so to demonstrate that, here's the clean tone. I'm going to flip it on and it's full. It's going to be full fuzz in its standard setting. So when you turn it on, it's a volume at full fuzz. But the magic happens when you start rolling this down. So check this out. I barely moved it. I'm at 10. At 9. And this is amazing because when you track guitars in a studio or live or all of your favorite records, you're usually rolling out tons of low end in a mix. So all the way up, you have this huge, very big muff sounding fuzz. Fuzz, the volume knob is all the way up on the guitar. Rolling it back to 9. It's just a perfect cutting tone. The further I go down, the thinner or brighter. Thinner is a bad word, but brighter, because it still has low end, but it just feels brighter and brighter in the right ways. Neck pickup. All the way up. Roll the volume off. So it's all about simple circuit, interacting with your hands, the feel of the guitar, and how hard you play the guitar. Arguably the best sound out of it, which is the most chaotic, is full guitar and turn the volume all the way up, which means full fuzz, full frequency, just crushing your amp. So like, this is awesome. Cool. So after getting home from Japan, I had designed it, notarized the schematic, knew what I was doing, and brought the transistor set. So I built this at my bench here in Kansas City. Yeah, it turned out really cool. Nick had already drilled the enclosure in the basement in Japan, so kind of built in Japan, but not really. But I fully assembled the circuit board piece by piece, point to point on a perf board, added all the switches and jacks, battery kill switch on here. And yeah, it turned out really great. It looks cool. It has a very DIY, but possibly a product. That's how some of the Japanese stuff can feel at times from that era. And it's fun. And I think it obviously has this tribute to a bit of a British aesthetic with the Rangemaster, as I've mentioned. It's like a little mystery device, the mystery fuzz. Big on and off. That just feels right. That's serious. The knob feels great too. It goes 0 to 9. You know, that's a thing. But yeah, super happy with it. I want to state that I know a lot of you are like, make this, I'll buy it. But it's impossible because this was an experience. It was traveling to Japan, going to the market, picking a handful of things out, and making this one unit. What I want to do is give this away to someone. This isn't a product that JHS can produce, nor do I want to. It was really fun, and I want someone out there to end up with it. So here are the rules to that giveaway.
Oh, you caught me reading. I'm sure you're looking for the rules for this giveaway. First, you're gonna need to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Second, this pedal has no name, so we're gonna need a name. The person who comes up with the best name in the comments below, who has liked this video and who has subscribed to our channel, will win this brand new Japanese style fuzz built by the hands of Josh Scott himself.
For those of you who won't win it, there are some options I want to throw out. I have posted the schematic to this circuit and you can have it for free. There's a link in the description. It's a PDF and it's a really straightforward fuzz face topology. You're gonna notice red highlights on a couple parts. Those are parts that I encourage you to just experiment with different parts on. So if you see one capacitor value that I used, you might want a different one because you play a different amp. That's your mod points in the red highlight. And then for those of you who don't build effects, here are some suggested affordable things that land in this wheelhouse. Now, this is the 3 Series Fuzz. This is a fuzz face topology, and the one I'm most proud of I tinkered with this topology for years, and that's why when I went to Japan, I know it. I can just draw it on paper. I know the circuit so well. This is a form of that circuit that I'm extremely proud of. So it'll do the cleanish stuff. It'll use the volume knob the way this one does, and it does the blown out big muff style thing as well. Then there's some other things that are really simple and straightforward with one knob. You have the Mythos Golden Fleece. It's amazing. It'll do a lot of this similar tonality. You have the Copper Sound Renegade, which is a really versatile one knob kind of thing as well. I love the Massif by Frost Giant. This thing it's abusive. Like, it's massive and crazy, and it interacts with your volume knob on your guitar. And then I would say, in the spirit of the tone, not really the circuit, the plug-in. This is based off the Jordan Boss tone. So this will get kind of wily and crazy in good ways. Those are some alternatives for those of you who can't build and you won't win and you need something to do here. You need to know what to buy. So that's what I would buy. Don't mind me, I'm just hanging out in a basement full of amazing gear in Japan building a Fuzz. The perf board's gonna be a mind bender. I haven't done it in so long. What if Nick did the perf board?
It could, but I don't know if it would. We might be here a lot longer.
It doesn't have to work. If this works, it'll be a literal act of God. What's act of God in Japanese? Kani-sama arigato.